Hey, welcome to Leading with Gratitude. I'm your host, Chester Elton. Give us 30 minutes and we hope to inspire, inform, and give you the tools to build a culture of gratitude at work and at home. And it's all brought to you by the wonderful Methods Network. Well, I can't tell you how excited I am to welcome our two guests. We've got some wonderful people that are going to help us get through this whole coronavirus thing. First, let me introduce to you my good friend, Shawn Boyer. Shawn is the CEO of GoHappy. Let me read a little bit of his bio here. It says, founded GoHappy after leading Snagajob, the nation's largest marketplace for hourly workers and employers, as founder and CEO from 2000 to 2013, and then chairman of the board in 2015. Shawn directed Snagajob's rapid growth from an idea to a marketplace that now has over 100 million members and over 250,000 employers. He's a graduate of the College of William and Mary and the Washington Lee School of Law. He received his LLM in taxation from Georgetown University Law Center. This is the part I love the most. Shawn loves being a husband and a dad of 3 awesome kids and doing anything fitness related so that he doesn't feel guilty making and drinking fun cocktails. So welcome to the show, Shawn. Wave to our fans out there. And secondly, let me introduce you, Mathieu Stevenson. Yeah, glad to have you. Mathieu Stevenson is the current CEO of Snagajob. He joined in 2019, spent his career in technology and marketplaces with stints at McKinsey, HomeAway, and Blucora. His first hourly job was as a lifeguard. You can see that fitness coming through there, Mathieu. It's awesome. A graduate of the University of Texas and Duke University, where he received his degrees in economics and his MBA. He loves spending time with his 3 boys and wife, Katie, and is a fan of all things barbecue, especially Texas brisket, Mexican food, and Thai food. So welcome to the show, Mathieu.
Thanks for having me.
I thought it'd be fun. Yeah, I thought it'd be fun for us to all talk about really quickly, since we're talking about hourly jobs, our first hourly job. So we know, Mathieu, your first job was as a lifeguard. Give me 30 seconds about your first paying job as a lifeguard. What was that like?
I was a lifeguard for 3 and 4-year-olds, so that mainly consists of little kids pushing you in the baby pool over and over again. So lifeguard is a generous term for what I actually did.
Excellent. And making sure nobody drowns. Right, there you go.
Awesome.
Shawn.
Mainly myself.
Yeah, Shawn. So Shawn, what was your first hourly job?
My first hourly job was actually working at my parents' jewelry store that they started when I turned 16. And so that was really, other than grass cutting, my first real job that, you kind of get thrown into the fire and do everything that you need to do, since it was only the family working there.
Excellent. My first hourly job, I'll never forget. It was Sparling's Sporting Goods at the Park Royal Mall in West Vancouver. And I loved everything sports, right? So it wasn't unusual where I wouldn't actually get a paycheck. I'd just get a new pair of basketball shoes or new strings for my tennis rackets. So we all remember our first hourly jobs. And if you've got a fun first hourly job, put it in the chat box there and we'll give you a shout out. Well, I'm going to throw this to you first, Mathieu. We're talking about the coronavirus and how so many, companies have shut down, and a lot of restaurants. I know Snagajob does a lot of work with fast food restaurants and so on that are now shut down. Talk to us a little bit about the impact that this has had on hourly workers.
Yeah, I think this is probably the most unprecedented shift in labor that we've seen probably since World War II. I think you've seen labor shift away from hard-hit industries like hospitality and restaurant now to really sort of the key, what I would say are growth sectors in the economy. So that's grocery, convenience store, pharmacy, cleaning, warehousing, and even healthcare, which is beyond nursing. That's even sort of the cooks and housekeepers that work in the hospitals and and healthcare centers.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier, talk about the percentage of the total workforce that are hourly. It's a huge number.
Yeah, it's 80 million total Americans that work in hourly jobs. So that's about 50% of the total labor force. And already in the last 2 weeks, I think we've seen 10 million first-time unemployment claims. The vast majority of those are hourly workers.
So you talked about this shift, from restaurants to hospitals and so on. Where are jobs for hourly workers right now? I mean, if you've lost your hourly job in retail or whatever it might be, who's hiring? Where can you go to find a job to replace the one you just lost?
Yeah, again, there are a handful of sectors that we've seen have acute hiring needs right now. So first is grocery, then logistics and warehousing. Amazon is obviously the one that people think of first. Cleaning, and then again, sort of healthcare, which includes everything from senior living facilities to actual hospitals. And my sort of advice to job seekers is sort of twofold. One is actually encouraging them to apply now and look for jobs now. What I've heard sort of anecdotally from whether it be cooks, or I was talking to a bartender the other night, and he was sort of reflecting to me that he had assumed that he was being furloughed for 2-3 weeks, and so hadn't been looking for a job, and was only just now realizing that actually this was going to last a lot longer. The second, and I think most important, is just have confidence. What I hear time and time again from the employers that are in fact hiring today is that what they care most about is the person and less about sort of what industry you've worked in. And so that really is important for people who might have been lifelong restaurant or hospitality workers.
I love that advice. Don't worry about your resume right now. Don't worry about what sector you've been in. Have confidence and go in. Now, I know at Snagajob, you've got some tools and whatnot to help people do that. Talk a little bit about how you educate people on how to get a job and interview and so on.
Yeah, I think there's sort of three things that we're doing to try and help hourly workers. Like, first and foremost is making sure that we have all of the available jobs and companies that are hiring right now. Like, you have to be able to come on to Snagajob and know that we're the single source of those jobs. The second is we have created a series of resources, in particular snagajob.com/urgently hiring, that highlights both the sectors and specific employers that are hiring, as well as the benefits that you're eligible for, which is particularly important at this point in time. And then the last, and I think is equally important, is we're really encouraging workers to build their profiles or their digital reputations, much like a salaried worker might have a LinkedIn profile, so that as companies need to rehire what is oftentimes entire workforces and tens of millions of workers in the coming months, they'll actually be able to find the hourly employees, not necessarily only the other way around.
Excellent. Shawn, I want to bring you into the conversation here because you were the one that really founded Snagajob. Talk about why you felt that was such an important area and was underserved really in a lot of the job search engines that are out there.
Yeah, well, it goes back to what Matthew was saying in terms of 50% of the workforce is actually paid by the hour. And so it actually stemmed from a friend of mine who was looking for an internship. And then I mentioned my parents had this jewelry store. I was talking to them about it, and they were looking for good hourly help. And they're like, you know what? There's not a source out there that focuses specifically on hourly workers. And so then as I started to talk to hourly workers and asking them, how do you actually find a job? At the time it was Monster and Career Builder and Hot Jobs, some more of the big salary boards, and they didn't really cater to that hourly marketplace. And so it ended up being, them driving around looking for those jobs. Hopefully, if they walked in someplace and asked if they were hiring, they were actually hiring. People had started to stop advertising in the newspaper. And so anyway, it's just this very manual, inefficient method of finding hourly work. And so I thought, you know what, this seems like a big window of opportunity. It was back in the .com craze, and I was working at a law firm at the time, which, no slight to lawyers, I just didn't love it. And so I decided, you know what, let's go give this a try. And then, it's been 20 years since then. And, as Matthew was just saying, it's the number one source for hourly workers to find hourly work now.
It's so interesting you bring that up. We talk a place that and how important that is, on the Snagajob side, finding the right fit and getting the right people in the right jobs. And I got to tell you, Shawn, I have a lot of friends that are lawyers. Not one of them likes their job. I don't know what it is about being a lawyer. It's just, maybe we need to go to hourly wage lawyers and spruce that up a little bit.
Right.
Now you're at GoHappy, which I think is an amazing platform that you've developed, and you're doing some really interesting things around that platform. So tell us a little bit about GoHappy, and I'd love for you to take some time and talk to us about your Extraordinary Worker campaign.
Yeah, sure. So at GoHappy, we're focused on helping companies communicate with and better engage with their hourly workers once they've hired them, and hopefully helping those hourly workers then feel more connected to and valued by the companies that they're working with. And so with that, we have a platform that allows companies to be able to communicate out to all hourly workers from corporate. You could do it from a regional level, district level. If it's like a restaurant, for instance, you can have your own group actually as a group of restaurant employees and be able to communicate in that way, hopefully in a more efficient way than what you're able to without a platform like this. And so, yeah, the Extraordinary Worker campaign that we've been running since the beginning of this year is really focused on highlighting hourly workers all across the country that may not be getting written up in the Wall Street Journal or a Forbes article or whatever, it might be, but yet are doing great work. And it just tends to get unnoticed and lesser appreciated than some of the, higher paying positions. And so the way it works is anybody can nominate somebody throughout the month. And then we narrow down those nominations to 3 finalists. And then those 3 finalists then can have the public vote on them. And then we name a winner based on that public vote at the end of each month. And we give the winner $1,000. And then at the end of the year, we'll be giving away $10,000 to one of those monthly award winners. So it's been awesome to see just the people who are nominated, the kinds of people. It's been school bus drivers and nurses and restaurant workers and so forth. And it's been really neat to see, even for those people who aren't a finalist, it's meant so much to them to have somebody actually just nominate them, and then to see the other comments that people are making about them. It's been heartwarming to see. So,
yeah, I love
I loved last month. The winner was the school bus driver, and watching her videos of the kids talking about how great she was, and the parents how much it meant to them. And then she got on and her little acceptance speech, you could just tell that it just meant the world to her. And like you say, not somebody that's going to be on the front page of the business section, somebody who every day just does a great job, takes care of your kids. It was very, very heartwarming. Tell us about a couple of other nominees that you've had, because the stories really are great.
Yeah. So you mentioned the school bus driver. So I have to just get a little quick plug for Mrs. C, as she's known by all of her parents and her kids. So, normally riding a school bus is this awful experience, right? Or at least it was when I was a kid. But in this woman's case, and she's been doing this for 20 plus years now, she's implemented a shoe tying program where the older kids are teaching the younger kids on the bus how to tie their shoes. Sight words. So if you remember back, or if you have younger kids, the whole thing about sight words, the older kids teaching them that, teaching them their multiplication tables. And so it's just awesome to see what, again, typically is this negative experience turned into this amazing thing. And the kids just love her, and she loves the kids. And so anyway, she was amazing. Our winner for this past month, we actually just announced today, and she's a labor and delivery nurse in New York. And she has her own little kids. And so as you can imagine, being a labor and delivery nurse at any time is extraordinary. And especially in this environment, still going in and, dealing with everything that you're dealing with anywhere, but especially in New York, and then coming back home each day, to her own kids. And she's just exceptional. And it was so neat to hear what everybody was saying about her in terms of, look, she's carrying this full-time job and she's got these 2 little kids, but still, if she hears about somebody in her neighborhood who is going without, she will go get them groceries, never, having been asked to go do anything, but will go get them groceries, and then has coordinated for all the other neighbors to go bring that neighbor groceries in the subsequent weeks. And so those are a couple of the examples of people that have been nominated, over the last couple of months.
I love that you're the good news. You're the good news out. There's lots of bad news, and you go to appropriately GoHappy Labs, right? And so I really encourage people to go there and nominate. I nominated our mailman, who keeps us connected with all our stuff, and we've got a funky address. He always makes sure we get the right mail, and so we leave out, bottles of water and cookies for him, which is great. Armando, the mailman, he's important to us. And you mentioned the labor and delivery nurse. I don't think a lot of people realize that a lot of nurses are hourly. They're paid by the hour. They're not full time. So, let me send it back to you, Mathieu, to talk about, there are hourly jobs out there that people don't realize that they are hourly jobs. And, we've talked a little bit about how do I make myself appealing to those people? I'd expound on that just a little bit, but what are some of the hourly jobs that you guys fill that, maybe guys like me don't understand that those people aren't full-time employees and what that means to them?
Yeah, I mean, again, when it's 50% of the economy, it really is every walk of life. And in a lot of ways, I think hourly employees are the backbone of America, right? Because it's everything from the dishwasher to the waiter to the store clerk to the front desk clerk at a hotel to the nurse and everything in between. And I think for companies, I'd say right now, for those that are hiring, like my encouragement is sort of twofold. Like, one, continue to highlight, the things that are always important to hourly workers around both, wages and benefits, but also just as importantly, like career development and sort of career progression. And then particularly right now, it's important to highlight what they're actually doing for worker safety. And there are some firms that are doing some really incredible things. And the more you can emphasize that, the better, because what we've actually seen is, worker job searches, surprisingly, even in the midst of unemployment soaring, is actually down. So there's about 50% fewer searches for full and part-time jobs than there were at the beginning of March, because workers are fearful, right? They're fearful of working in a pandemic. And so that's the opportunity for employers to really stress all the things that they're doing to ensure that their workers are safe.
You forget about that, you go on and you get your unemployment and so on. And even if a job comes up, say, well, look, we need some hourly people at the hospital. You might have a lot of people say, hey, the hospital is the last place I want to go. So how do employers then dispel those fears and to get people in the door? Because, I talk to friends that work at our local hospital at Overlook, and they say, look, people are exhausted. They need more people. And yet and yet you've got all this historic unemployment, and yet people won't come. So as an employer, how do you coach them to say, we've got a good job here for you, it's going to pay well, and it'll be safe? How do they dispel those fears?
Well, I think there are two things that employers can do. One is sort of the basic hygiene of explaining to workers what steps concretely they have taken to ensure workplace safety. And that is more important now than ever. Second is, of course, like highlighting what healthcare benefits they do have available. And again, like the awareness and demand for that is at an all-time high, as you would suspect. And then, I would also just encourage them to appeal to the sense of mission and purpose. Because for so many of us, particularly our hourly workers, like that is a huge driver. And so think about the hospital or even the grocery store, how important that is to keeping people either safe or recovering from the virus or just feeding the economy, right? Like it is truly what is giving us all sort of the support that we need in this time. And I think that's a really powerful thing when you're a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Go ahead, Shawn.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just going to piggyback on what Mathieu was saying, that there are such great stories to be shared by these companies with their employees as to how those employees are living out the mission. And so just like Mathieu was saying, you have a grocery store clerk who is enabling this elderly person to go in and get their groceries, or it is the Instacart employee who is delivering these groceries to this elderly person who couldn't get out of their house. Like, what would it be like for that person if they didn't have somebody assisting them getting their groceries when they went to the store, or that person who was able to deliver what they needed to them? And so those basic things that we so oftentimes take for granted, right now it's highlighted that, you know what, man, if we didn't have these people, we, in each of those two cases, the person would be without. And so, yeah, just sharing those stories and giving shout outs to those employees so that what they're doing has real meaning to them. And it does. It's just, let's not miss the time to be able to share those with everybody and to show our appreciation for those folks.
We talk often about, in a crisis, you've got to fill the communication voids, right? You've got to communicate 2, 3, 4 times more than you normally would. Talk a little bit about how GoHappy can fill that void from the employer to the part-time employee, or the hourly employee, because often, when you're hourly or you're part-time, you don't always necessarily feel a part of the big company. You're ancillary. So talk about, that platform and how employers can then fill that void, because what we found is when there's a lack of communication and there's a void, fear sets in. I mean, you replace that with fear. If they're not saying something, it means there's bad news out there. Talk a little bit about how important it is for employers through your platform to fill that void.
Yeah. And I think it's always important for that to be happening. And to your point, Chester, given what we're going through right now, it's highlighting the need for that. And so, corporate needs to be communicating out things right now in terms of policy changes, sanitization, new policies around that, anything related to healthcare, like Matthew is mentioning, where, a lot of people are upping the ante in terms of what it is that they're offering, hour changes, all those kinds of things. And so in the absence of that, people are relying upon their local leader to hopefully relay that onto them, which, regardless of how good the manager is, they're super busy with a lot of things too. People are working different shifts, different days of the week. And so a lot of things just end up falling through the cracks. And so people just aren't aware of what's happening. And so we got an example, when all of this first started to happen, you're really at the kind of the heightened level. We were out skiing in Colorado on our family vacation, and I talked to one of the workers at the top of the mountain at a restaurant, and she mentioned that her team had a meeting that day and that there was talks of the resort shutting down. Literally later that day, I was talking to somebody else at the front desk of one of the hotels there at the resort, and was asking her what she had heard, and she asked me what I had heard. And I relayed on the conversation that I had with that person about, maybe the resort was going to shut down. She's like, really? Why has nobody told me that? And so it's just, again, it's one of those things that you could tell just from her facial expression and the way she was talking, that she didn't feel appreciated. It's that, hey, this one group of employees, is being told one thing. I'm here working the front desk. I'm taking these card keys, right, that could have the virus on them, right? And so they're sitting there cleaning the card keys and stuff, but yet nobody's told us about this. And, nobody's told us that there's going to be another meeting tomorrow. And so I just think in this crisis, it's super important to be, like you said, communicating 3 times more, 4 times more with your front line, who is having the direct interaction with your customers. So you want them to be happy. You want them to feel valued. You want them to feel connected. You obviously need them to know about the important policy changes and, all the different sanitization updates and stuff. So it's crucial.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Matthew. I was going to say,
I think
your turn.
No, I was just going to add that, I think sometimes people are fearful of like being as transparent as they can be. And I think irrespective of the type of organization that you're a part of, whether it be a company or even a nonprofit or a local club, like people want to feel like you trust them and appreciate them and that they are in the boat with you. And that's why, I think it's incredibly important now more than ever to share the good with the bad, as well as the steps that you're taking. I think it really can galvanize an organization in ways that, I think withholding that just actually permeates the issue.
Perfect. Yeah, great advice. We got about 3 minutes to go. So really concisely, Matthew, I got a question here that says, I'm an hourly worker. I haven't lost my job yet. There's a lot of rumors out there. What are some things I can do to make myself as valuable to the organization as possible so that if there are layoffs, I'm not one of those that gets laid off? Any advice on that?
I think continuing to do the job that you do day in and day out and having the conversations with your manager and actually being transparent around sort of the sense of unease that you feel. A lot of times just even broaching that discussion will go a long way to give you a sense of, should you actually be worried, or in fact, should you not? And so I just encourage people to have that direct conversation and have it as openly as possible.
Excellent. Okay, so here we go. 3 bits of advice. Shawn, you're going to go first. 3 great pieces of advice for, hourly workers and communication in the workplace. I'm going to send it to you first, and then Matthew, your 3 great pieces of advice. Go ahead, Shawn, you're up.
Okay, and this is specific to the workers or to the companies?
Whatever advice you want to give. Make it 3.
Whatever. Okay. So 3 things. One is, and these are directed towards the companies, I would say over communicate what's happening in the organization, just like Matthew said, be transparent. The second thing is share your praise and appreciation for people in an abundant way right now. Just, go overboard with it. But like you say, Chester, make sure it's specific and so forth. And 3, set up a way so that those coworkers can be having times to be able to communicate as a team with their local leader.
Excellent advice. Matthew.
I'd have 2 for workers and 1 for employers. For workers, again, don't assume that this is a 2 to 3 week crisis. And if you have been unemployed, I'd encourage you again to be proactive in your search. Second is, again, have confidence that people care about you as the person more than necessarily your job history. And third, for employers, and it may sound crazy given where we are today, we actually need to be thinking about the relaunch plan, because hopefully in 8, 10, 12 weeks, we're actually going to be rebuilding the economy and needing to rehire maybe tens of millions of workers all at the same time.
Wow, great advice. Well, listen, so where can we go, Shawn, to find more about GoHappy? Your website again is?
GoHappyLabs.com.
And nominate somebody that's an extraordinary worker. I've done it a couple of times now. By the way, the process is really fun. You can upload videos. You can talk about people that just touch your life every day that are under the radar. So I love that campaign. Matthew, more about Snagajob. Where can we go to get some good advice and look for those great jobs?
Either snagajob.com or snagajob.com/urgently hiring.
Awesome. Well, we've got a website as well for those of you that want to build a great culture of gratitude, leadingwithgratitudebook.com. A lot of great downloads there. And we've actually even got our own little motivators assessment that we've been giving away at freemotivatorsassessment.com. That's a lot of S's, so make sure you spell it right. Well, listen, both Shawn and Matthew, thank you so much for being on the show today and giving such great advice. When half the workforce are hourly workers, we need to take better care of them. And by the way, for those of you that are listening, make sure you say thank you to those nurses out there and the folks in the grocery stores and your mailmen. They are doing their jobs. They're keeping us connected. And you know what? They're putting themselves a little bit in danger. And we should respect that and be grateful for that. Well, listen, a shout out to Brent Klein, our producer, who puts all these wonderful things together. The Methods Network. We're every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern time. We've got some really interesting guests coming up on Thursday. You're going to love this, Shawn and Matthew. This is 7 at Sea. This is Eric and Emily Orton. They took a family of 5, so with their parents, 7 people on a boat for a year. So if you want great ideas on how to live hunkered down in a small space, teaching your kids, it's going to be a great show. Thursday at 1. Hey, thanks again, guys. Really appreciate all your help.
Well, thanks for
say
having
thank
us.
you to
appreciate it.
You
Yeah,
bet.
thank you.
Love
Chester.
you guys.
Thank you, Matthew.